This is the next step in terms of containment. This is not complicated, people. Stay home, save lives. That's all we want.
A pandemic thrust our city into lockdown.
You know, economies tend to get into this type of depression, but you never think it's going to be in your backyard. But today it is.
Unemployment skyrocketed. San Antonians struggling to put food on the table.
We're seeing demand like we've not seen before.
And social injustice sparked calls for change.
We want change, we want unity, we want peace. Well, this is right now what we're doing afterwards, changing, unifying, and providing peace to those who are in need of it.
But through every crisis, one thing remains the same.
We're all in this together. A lot of darkness that we have to get through together, but the sun also rises.
The mayor just announced 43 new cases less than an hour ago. 75 people have died and more than 60% of patients have officially declared the stay-at-home, work-safe order on Tuesday, March 24th, encouraging San Antonians to stay home in order to slow the spread of coronavirus. Since March, the city has battled a few major outbreaks at nursing facilities and the Bexar County Jail. Following those outbreaks, the mayor worked to expand testing at these facilities and across the city, mobilizing traveling testing sites. And last month, the city began offering tests to people who are asymptomatic, meaning they're not showing any symptoms. Under orders from the governor, the city started to reopen in April. Following that order, the city extended their stay-at-home, work-safe order through June, continuing to encourage people to stay home despite businesses reopening. We now want to bring up our coronavirus graph mapping the trend of current cases. This graph shows the moving average. That's the dotted line you see there. It calculates the average new cases we're seeing over the past 14 days. You can see the average has mostly been trending downward with a very small spike over the past week. The coronavirus pandemic also put a strain on our city's economy, as it did nationwide, leaving many unemployed. In response to unemployment, the city's approved $25.8 million to help local families in need. Part of the money was allocated to a new COVID-19 emergency housing assistance program. It's aimed at helping San Antonians with funds for rent, mortgage, groceries, medicine, fuel, and utilities. That program set to end July 31st. While very recent, Mayor Nirenberg is also expected to address calls to end racial inequalities in San Antonio and across the nation. Weekend protests were triggered by the death of a black man, George Floyd, at the knee of a white police officer in Minneapolis 1 week ago. The majority of protests this weekend remained peaceful, but riots broke out on Saturday night, people destroying businesses, police property, and looting downtown. Mayor Nirenberg did address that riot, saying the behavior was unlike San Antonio. Again, these are just a few of the issues we expect to hear from the mayor tonight. Throughout his State of the City, we'll be asking you to weigh in, so grab your phone or computer and head to the KENS 5 app, kens5.com/vote, or pull up the KENS 5 app. Live polls will deliver what you think to us throughout this broadcast. And during the address, we're going to have several live polls to get your thoughts. Responses will appear live at the bottom of the screen. All you have to do to vote is head to that address, kens5.com/vote, or pull up the KENS 5 app. We'll be hoping to hear from your opinion tonight. We are still getting set for Mayor Nirenberg to speak tonight. Again, we're expecting to hear about a lot of topics, mainly and probably the one affecting most of us, the coronavirus epidemic. Again, 2,882 confirmed cases of the virus here in the county. Mayor just an hour ago telling us about 43 new cases. 75 people have died. But the good news, and I think the thing so many of us are happy to hear, 60% of patients have recovered. And that's really been a great thing. And throughout this fight, we've heard just how well San Antonio hospitals have been doing. And we hope to hear more on that fight and what we can do, what we can all do to help that. So that's part of what we hope to hear tonight, as well as just, these calls. And we saw today earlier in the KENS 5 broadcast, the march that's happening right downtown to address racial injustice in policing as far as the death of George Floyd is concerned. We're seeing that across Texas tonight, and certainly something we expected the mayor to address tonight. He's spoken about it before, but right now we're also expecting him to say something again, especially after riots happened here in San Antonio Saturday. Certainly a lot of sadness and anger being felt across the city, and some people choosing to exercise the wrong way to show it. Again, these are just some of the issues we expect to hear about tonight from the mayor. And so if you'd like to be part of the conversation, head to your phone, head to your computer, kens5.com/vote, or pull up the KENS 5 app. During the address, we've got several polls and questions we'd like to hear from you and get your responses and include them in our broadcast and make sure that your voices are heard. Again, we'll be talking about the coronavirus. We'll be talking about George Floyd, and we'll be hoping to hear what the mayor has to say about that and a lot of other topics. And one thing I think that the city has done and tried to do really well is get coronavirus testing. If you're asymptomatic in San Antonio, you can go out to a number of testing sites, call 311 and get your information of where you need to go to get tested. That information is readily available, and getting tested is so important right now as people are hoping to get back to work. So many of you asking to, reopen our business, reopen our favorite restaurant, let us go back to the bars, and we're all counting on, hoping to stay healthy, and testing is a big part of that. So we hope that people do that and take advantage of that. And if we can, I'd love to show some of these graphs we have pertaining to the coronavirus and what we've been studying here. We've got a trend map. I'm not sure if we can see that or not right now. Let's see. And I'll just reference it. I'm not sure if you at home can see it, but I'll tell you what it says. The graph shows the moving average, calculating what's happening over the past 14 days. So many of these resources are available at the city's website. If you just search coronavirus gov, the city of San Antonio and coronavirus, these resources will come up to you and tell you everything you need to know about our fight here against the coronavirus here in town. Most importantly, we're seeing hospitalizations tick up, but what are the things that the city is tracking to tell us how well we're doing in the fight against the coronavirus? All that information is there for you online. Again, we're waiting for the mayor in just a few minutes. He should be ready to speak, and that's what we're standing by here for. So again, and why do we care so much about the coronavirus? I'm sure and I'm working at home because of the coronavirus, so let's talk about it. It's really put a burden on this entire city's economy, the state's economy, the country's economy. So many of us are feeling it right now. And in response to that unemployment, the city approved $25.8 million to help local families in need, a great resource. And we've seen all the people. The San Antonio Food Bank is helping. And if you feel so inclined, certainly be a party to donate to them. I know they can use all the help they can need right now, because so many of us are in need that we weren't expecting to have happen because of all this. Now, part of that money allocated, that $25.8 million to help local families, part of that allocated to the COVID-19 Emergency Housing Assistance Program. So if you are in need, the city's got resources for you, and they're looking to connect you. So let's put two and two together and get people some help out there. This is aimed at helping San Antonians with funds for rent, mortgage, groceries, medicine, fuel, and utilities. That program set to end July 31st. So while we've got 2 months to take advantage of that, make sure if you are in need, the city's asking, they've got this money, they need to give it away, so they need to get it to you. So give them a call. Go online, get some of that help. And it's certainly, as we see the stories that are going to be coming very shortly, because right now we know that people are going to be, frankly, be put out of their house once these evictions start again. And that's not something we want to see. So we want to see people.
It's unusual for a mayor to make a
connected to the
primetime
resources.
address, but these are extraordinary times.
My phone
We're in
is
the
on
midst of a
other side the room,
COVID-19 pandemic,
so I can't get to
and for the
the
past
breakdown of
week,
new cases.
our nation has been in turmoil over the murder of George Floyd while in custody of the Minneapolis
Again, we're
police,
waiting for San Antonio
spawning
Mayor
legitimate
Ron Nirenberg
marches
to deliver the
for
state of
justice
the
and
city
unfortunate
address.
violence by opportunists. Even in the best case scenario, these last few months have put you and your loved ones on edge. The disruptive events downtown Saturday night, instigated by a few and separate from the peaceful protests for justice and reform, certainly didn't help. But throughout the COVID-19 crisis, the world has once again seen the very best of humanity through the people of our city, and we can all be proud of that. Thank you to our local heroes, like 10-year-old Alejandra, who has spent the last 3 months of her free time making face masks and selling them to benefit other families at her school. Paul, a COVID survivor, who has gone on a personal crusade to save lives through plasma donation. And the doctors, nurses, grocery workers, farm workers, and firefighters who are working on the front lines of the pandemic day after day. To the thousands of you who are following the guidance of the medical professionals by physical distancing, staying home when possible, and wearing masks. A study by the Big City Health Coalition and Drexel University has shown you have collectively saved more than 9,000 lives in our community. Thank you for doing your part. But the COVID-19 pandemic has been a challenge unlike any we have ever seen in our lifetimes. As a result, too many Americans, too many San Antonians, have seen their health threatened by disease, desperation, or both. And while we've successfully navigated, with agility, more than 4 months of traumatic developments that swept across the globe and through our own neighborhoods, there is still much to be done. By acting early and decisively, and with compassion for each other, we've thwarted an unbridled spread of the coronavirus and even deadlier consequences. A reminder, the coronavirus hit our radar on February 7th, when the first of 3 evacuee missions arrived at Joint Base San Antonio-Lackland. The base housed hundreds of American travelers who had been exposed to the virus. These missions were a blessing in disguise, as they allowed us to coordinate our response early. The first case of COVID-19 contracted in San Antonio was reported on March 13th, the same day Fiesta was postponed. 10 days later, County Judge Nelson Wolf and I issued stay-home, work-safe orders, and working in close collaboration, the county and the city each crafted 7 emergency orders. And I've worked closely with my city council colleagues to extend the orders to effectively cover the duration of the COVID-19 peak in our community. To date, nearly 3,000 San Antonio residents have tested positive for COVID-19, and 75 have tragically died from COVID-related causes. The best way to honor their memories is to remember that COVID-19 is an invisible enemy, and to take the proper care to ensure that we and those around us don't get infected. By staying home, practicing physical distancing, and wearing masks when close to those who don't live in our households, we've slowed the spread of the virus and increased medical capacity. We are prepared for a second wave. Our community has flattened the curve and avoided the nightmare of an overwhelmed healthcare system by working together and protecting each other. We've been guided all along the way by our incredible healthcare professionals. Our Metropolitan Health District has served our community around the clock without hesitation. And local health professionals rose to the challenge on our health transition team to provide guidance as we move towards a healthier San Antonio. From the directors to the epidemiologists, doctors to nurses, contract workers to contact tracers, our city is in your debt. The courageous men and women of the San Antonio Fire Department have done a stellar job on the front lines transporting COVID patients and conducting tests in every corner of our city. And the steady leadership of our city management has ensured the entire operation continued seamlessly. While we've done remarkably well, the coronavirus pandemic has taken a damaging toll on our economy, just as it's done around the globe. Slowing the spread required slowing economic activity. The loss in tourism business has led to losses in leisure and hospitality, and fewer people are able to spend money at other local businesses. The damage ripples onward. We're now in the early phase of reopening our businesses and reigniting our economy, and this must be done carefully. Consumer confidence will be necessary for our businesses to flourish again. We must be certain we are proceeding safely to build that confidence. Our health professionals will continue to guide our steps, preventing another retreat that moving blindly could bring. So as we reopen, we must also act to prevent the damage caused by COVID-19 from further eroding our economy. So I want to thank the leaders from all over our city that stepped up on our economic transition team to provide the necessary guidance to safely reopen San Antonio businesses. We truly are all in this together, and we will continue to face an unprecedented test as a city and a community. COVID-19 has moved the ground beneath our feet. It's changing our landscape, shifting our immediate needs, and further exposing long-term problems that have too often plagued us. While I'm proud of our community's response, this is a long and difficult journey, and we're only at the beginning. The fundamental question we have all had to grapple with is, how do we ensure our community is healthy? Beyond preserving life and safety, how do we ensure that every family in San Antonio can come out of this ahead of where they were when they started? Our economic situation as a city and as individuals has suffered major blows that must be addressed. Unemployment is soaring, and thousands of our neighbors are unable to pay the rent, pay down their mortgage, or even put food on the table. We're seeing these issues across the country, and they're impossible to ignore in our San Antonio, because as a community we are so close-knit. So as we survey COVID-19's damage, we can't turn away from the inequities in the economic and social structure of our city. COVID-19 has been an unwelcomed stress test, exposing buried fault lines in our community and massive disparities in educational attainment, life expectancy, access to the internet, and economic opportunity. These problems need to be taken head-on now if we are to emerge from this crisis as a stronger city. In the wake of any crisis, we're forced to take a full accounting of our community to understand its core problems and to reassess our priorities. What has been made clear in the last few months is that just as underlying health conditions make the coronavirus more deadly, pre-existing poverty and inequities have made the economic challenge more catastrophic. We're justifiably horrified that the number of people seeking help from the San Antonio Food Bank doubled to 120,000 people a week as a result of COVID-19. But in our zeal to return to normalcy, we cannot forget that the San Antonio Food Bank was already feeding 60,000 people a week before the pandemic. This is unacceptable. As we rebuild our city's foundation, we must ensure that every family has the ability to eat, that every child born in San Antonio will not go hungry, and that they have the opportunity to thrive. The COVID crisis has shown us that San Antonio's neighborhood boundaries often serve as barriers to that opportunity. The zip codes that lack adequate internet access are the same zip codes that lack access to basic health care. Where you live should not determine your access to basic resources, basic opportunities, or basic support from your city. Because if the coronavirus has taught us anything, it's that we're all connected. What happens to each person in our community has a direct effect on you, just as what happens to you has a direct effect on all of us. So yes, the fault lines have been exposed, but it's our collective duty to rebuild, together. Beyond the reach for far too many San Antonians for far too long, and that has held us all back. There's a great quote attributed to Coach Popovich that says, "It's not about any one person. You've got to get over yourself and realize that it takes a group to get this thing done." And that's what we're going to do. Our top priorities must be managing the crisis, preventing both an economic and health catastrophe, and providing opportunity for all San Antonians as we restore our livelihoods. We need all hands on deck. As we chart this course, we must put aside previous plans that made sense before the pandemic sent shockwaves through our community. Rivers adapt when they encounter obstacles, so we too must adapt our plans for the future of San Antonio. That means new investment in our transit system must wait. So in November, we will not be asking voters to redirect the 1/8-cent sales tax that becomes available next year to the transportation system outlined in the Connect SA process. We will champion new efforts in our transit agency to assess and fund the priorities of delivering effective, essential service where it's needed the most. This is a painful but necessary decision for us. But direct action to ensure a healthful economic recovery is mandatory. It means rebuilding now. We will take the time we need to fully understand the depth of the pandemic's financial damage before making new investments. This also means delaying a decision about the future of the Edwards Aquifer Protection Program funding. The slowdown in sales tax collection means that funds the program, that the amount committed by voters 5 years ago will not be collected until the summer of 2021. That's much later than expected. Prudence requires that we wait until next year to make a final decision about the future of the program's funding, which for decades has made progress to ensure an adequate amount of clean recharge flows into the aquifer. The aquifer program, meanwhile, will continue while we cope with COVID-19 and begin the rebuilding process. Repairing the damage of this upheaval alone will require our top priorities to focus on rebuilding our city as a place that is stronger, equitable, and more resilient. This crisis has brought us collectively to a crossroads. The decision of how we respond is ours alone. We cannot allow the virus-spawned wave of unemployment to evolve into more poverty and more homelessness. City Council and city staff already have taken the initial steps, including the $25 million Emergency Assistance Fund to help people knocked out of their jobs by COVID-19 pay their rent, mortgages, and utilities until we get our economy reopened and running again. On Thursday, the City Council will officially set priorities for our restoration effort when we approve spending plans for the $270 million San Antonio has received from the Federal Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, also known as the CARES Act. It's essential that we get this right, and I'm determined to craft a recovery that builds our community in a more equitable way. This is the time to reboot. We must emerge from this crisis as a community that doesn't accept widespread poverty as a fact of life. The funds available for recovery will be targeted at housing security, workforce development, universal internet access, and small business support. We can't allow rampant food insecurity. And it's unacceptable for any definition of normal to include thousands of students who lack access to education simply because they don't have internet service at home. The internet is a utility as essential as water and electricity. The digital divide must be bridged, so we must have a broadband network that reaches every family in San Antonio. Housing security is a necessity. We cannot and will not allow homelessness to grow as a result of this pandemic. San Antonio families who have lost their income because of COVID-19 can't also be allowed to lose their homes. And small businesses will be receiving help so they can get back on their feet and provide jobs for our community. The vast majority of San Antonio jobs come from small businesses, and we will not abandon this important segment of our community. The funding that San Antonio has received through the CARES Act will help us prevent a collapse of our community, but the work has only just begun. Just as you take a hard look at your resources and focus your family's priorities on what is truly important, I and the Council look with the same lens if we are to emerge stronger. San Antonio's recovery, just like this country's and perhaps the world's, will not happen overnight. It will take months and maybe even years. The road will be long, but if we endeavor together, we will prosper. We know which way we must go, and we know where we must end. We must find a healthier normal. We must end as an equitable city, where all residents have enough food, a roof over their heads, and a fair chance at an education and a good job. But we'll also have to cope with the governmental consequences of the economic slowdown. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's estimated that the city's current budget will have $200 million less revenue than anticipated. City Manager Eric Walsh already has suspended more than $80 million in budgeted spending to address the shortfall. Additional steps will be required to balance this year's budget, and the next city budget is expected to be much tighter. City Council will be forced to make the most difficult cuts in memory. Business as usual is out of the question, but I know my colleagues are up to the task. However, to stimulate the economy as quickly as possible and create jobs immediately, I've asked our city management to accelerate all construction and infrastructure projects that are scheduled and funded. This includes our 6-year capital improvement program, as well as the projects that have been waiting to commence from the voter-approved 2017 bond program. Safely, but surely, let's get to work. Now, the CARES Act provided one-time funding. We'll also need to address our economic reality with long-term action. That's why it's critical that we continue the overwhelming success of Pre-K for SA, which will be on your ballot this fall. After you have voted to approve this program in 2012, thousands of San Antonio's youngest residents are now on a path of educational success and economic mobility. I hope Pre-K for SA continues to earn your support. But long-term action to ensure a sustained economic recovery requires us to build on both ends of the educational pipeline. Imagine a city where your ability to pay did not determine the level of education you could access. A place where initiative and work ethic are enough to climb the ladder of economic opportunity. That's the kind of equal opportunity that is fundamental to the American dream, and it should be found in no less measure here in San Antonio than anywhere else in the United States. The new normal demands that the growing number of families, which was 20% in 2018, the most in the nation, who are locked in intractable poverty, have the keys to economic mobility. We must strive for a community where every child, regardless of where they are born, has access to affordable and quality education and professional certification programs, which we know is the best way to build a durable future. Tonight, I'm beginning an effort to determine how we can best free ourselves from the anchor of socioeconomic inequity through education and training. I'll be convening a group of community leaders to help us chart the path forward. They'll report back to identify the highest priority efforts we can make as a community to improve economic opportunity for all. And we will act. COVID-19 has changed our landscape. We must adjust our agenda accordingly. The damage caused by this pandemic is forcing us to focus on ensuring that our community weathers this crisis intact. We will not abandon San Antonians to COVID-induced homelessness. We will not accept that an economic underclass is a fact of life in our community. COVID is a tragedy, but the pandemic can be an agent of monumental change if we use it as a catalyst to solve the challenges that have hindered our ability to reach the next level. As we rebuild, we will address our long-term problems. We will ensure that San Antonians will not be denied a quality education because they don't have access to the internet. And we will provide for an infrastructure of opportunity so that San Antonio residents can be part of the workforce that the future economy requires. These are difficult days ahead. We're in the midst of a long fight to contain the deadly virus, and we're facing certain economic challenges. San Antonio will emerge as a stronger city with a population prepared to fully engage in our modern economy. Our community has always been fortified by what we've survived. Now, we begin the task of building from our foundation, and in doing so, giving rise to a more resilient, equitable city of opportunity for all. Time and again, light emerges from darkness and beauty emerges from despair. The compassion and resilience that define our unique culture will continue to get us through. For the worst is temporary, and the best is yet to come. Thank you.